fatenzo.com, 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 fatenzo.com.
Thanks for tuning in to episode 27 of the Bobby Pickles podcast. Podcasting from Spark of the Divine Meditation Center in Vero Beach, Florida, I'm Bobby Pickles. With me today is Mark Anthony. Mark is a medium who harbors an innate ability to speak with dead people. Furthermore, he is also a successful attorney, therefore he probably has great communication skills with the living too. He markets himself as the psychic lawyer or psychic attorney, of which he owns both trademarks. But actually, wouldn't that be somewhat of a misnomer, Mark, the psychic thing? Isn't there a difference between the term psychic and medium?
That's an excellent question, Bobby. Every medium is also a psychic, but not every psychic is also a medium.
Okay.
In a nutshell, if you want to know about your love life and your career, see a psychic. If you want to talk to dead people, see a medium.
And that's what you are.
I am a medium, but I'm also psychic. I do get premonitions. In my next book, which
Are you picking up anything on me right now? What am I asking next? Everybody says that probably, right?
They do. Everybody thinks that I can read their mind and foretell the future and pick winning lottery
numbers. Can you do any of that?
It comes to me. Let me explain it this way. When I want to communicate with spirits, that I can turn on. When it comes to premonitions and foretelling the future, that's something that simply comes to me.
Like an intuition?
Correct.
Yeah? Maybe you just have like a really strong intuition.
Well, we all have intuitive gifts and abilities. Let me ask you this.
What?
Do you feel that you have men's intuition, or would you prefer to frame it as gut instinct or a gut feeling?
I don't know if I'd sum it up with men's anything. I would just say everybody could have intuition.
Right, and it's the way we're socialized. Women have women's intuition because
really?
traditionally...
Oh, I didn't know there's a... I never... No.
No. It's the way we are socialized.
Right.
Men are socialized to not embrace their emotions and to somehow look at being warm and fuzzy.
I have like a girl's brain. I was an English major. You know,
you're what? You're an English major.
I have a girl's brain. I was an English major. I'm not good at math. You know, I mean, I'll be straight up with it. I'm not really into cars or anything like that, or not that much sports. I'm a weirdo like that. So, but I would say, I don't know, I never knew there was a difference between intuition and gut feeling, though.
There isn't. I'm trying to, if you'll give me a second, I'll actually explain it.
All right, explain it.
Okay. It's what we call it. It's the same thing. We hear about women's intuition. When you frame men's intuition, a lot of men will say, no, I don't have intuition. But all the soldiers, all the Marines, all the cops that I know say that every time they listen to their gut instinct, every time they listen to their gut feelings, it saves their lives. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's just a different word in our socialized.
Correct.
You know, that's all it is. But, and I didn't know that there's a difference between the two. No, I'm not intuitive. It's a gut instinct.
That's right. Well, think of it this way.
What?
Rambo, Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Okay, these guys have instinct.
Yeah.
Okay? Women have intuition. And let me ask you a question.
What?
When it comes to your gut instinct, every time you have ignored it or overruled it, are you A, happy you did, or B, wish you had listened to it?
You wish you had listened to it.
There you go.
Yeah. So, well, I was going to say, how about medium mediator? You know, I was going to suggest instead of psychic lawyer.
I am a mediator. I'm licensed by the state of Florida as a mediator. So what that means is I help people resolve differences, whether it's around a conference table between people suing each other or between people here in the material world who want to resolve issues with deceased loved ones on the other side. One of the worst things that can happen is that when someone you love dies and you left on bad terms, and there's a lot of regrets and hurts. And in my book, Never Letting Go, I address that quite a bit. There was one woman I did a reading for. Her father, he, during the course of his life, was a schizophrenic. However, he was also a multimillionaire. So his whole life he played these games with her and her siblings. You're in the will, you're out of the will, you're in the will, you're out of the will. He was very ill. He was about to slip into a coma. She was the first one of the family to be there. His last words to her were, "You're my least favorite kid, but you're here."
Wow. That's crazy. So you mediate between the living and the dead. You are a crackerjack mediator, if I may say, right?
I facilitate communication.
Isn't this in your blood, though? I read somewhere you come from a long line of psychics or mediators.
Yeah, both mom and dad.
Mediums.
Well, on both sides of the family, there's psychics and mediums. On mom's side of the family, it runs back to about 1890.
Come over in Plymouth.
No, they came over through Ellis Island. Mom's
did?
family, they were Italians.
There we go.
And Catholics, and it was interesting the
Oh
way
my
that's...
God, we're friends. We got the same stock. Same stock.
So, do you like angel hair or regular spaghetti?
I like baked ziti.
Oh, he's a ziti man.
Yeah, ziti's the perfect consistency. You know how large it is and everything like that. Absolutely. Angel hair is too thin.
Well, the two different sides of family treated their abilities very differently. The Italians looked at it as a gift from God. And my great-grandmother was a real powerhouse, Giovanna Costa, in the Italian-American community, and she was known as the woman who knew things. Then my dad's family, they are the ones that came over a few ships after the Mayflower.
That woman knows too much. She knows too much.
She knows too much. And then my dad's family came over to the colonies around 1690. And they were very conservative, and they looked at this ability as something to be afraid of, although a lot of them were practicing mediums and psychics. So,
do you have evidence of this in your father's family, like back in the day, like during the Salem witch trial era and all that kind of crazy
Salem
stuff?
witch trials occurred in the 1620s. My family didn't come over until the 1690s.
I mean, I thought it was like 16-something, so I was just kind of guessing.
Only about a 70-year difference.
Wasn't there still some kind of craziness going on, in that regard? Nothing changed that much in 60 years or whatever.
That's why they kept it quiet. In fact, at that time, in the 1690s, witchcraft was still considered something to be feared, to the extent that in 1735 the British Parliament enacted the Anti-Witchcraft Act, which the last person convicted under the British Anti-Witchcraft Act of 1735 was Helen Duncan in 1944. She was such a powerful medium that there was a ship that had been sunk. A British battleship had been torpedoed in the Mediterranean off of Egypt. It was moving against an Italian convoy that was supplying Rommel in North Africa. And 3 hours after it was torpedoed by a German U-boat, Helen Duncan was performing a mediumship demonstration in London, and she was what's known as a physical medium. She could actually project from her body an image.
Ectoplasm?
Ectoplasm. She could project ectoplasm, and a sailor came forward wearing a HMS Barham insignia, and a woman in the front row goes, "Oh my God, that's my husband." So then the British military wants to know how Helen Duncan knew that a top secret mission had failed and that the Barham was sitting at the bottom of the Mediterranean before the British Admiralty could confirm that loss. So in 1944, around January, military police broke into one of Helen Duncan's mediumship demonstrations and arrested her and charged her with witchcraft. Now, it gets even trickier than that because she was also, behind the scenes, Winston Churchill's personal advisor and medium. So this was very embarrassing to Churchill politically and socially. And since the British Prime Minister did not have pardon power like the U.S. President does, Helen Duncan was convicted, spent 9 months in prison. Long story short, the military in England was afraid Helen Duncan could do something which would have compromised the D-Day invasion, which was coming up in June of 1944. So when people start knocking psychics and mediums, I give a lot of lectures that over one-third of our presidents, including the current occupant of the White House, has utilized a psychic advisor. The British royal family and the British prime ministers have been using them for centuries, and we can go back all the way to the dawn of recorded history in ancient China, India, and Egypt, and there have always been people with metaphysical skills. Look at our own Bible traditions. The three wise men, the Magi, they were the astrologers who were advising the royal court of Persia, and because of what they noticed astrologically, a special alignment, they knew that a king was going to be born in Judea at a specific time. So it wasn't this, spotlight Steven Spielberg-esque on a nativity scene glowing, in Bethlehem. It was an astrological alignment which indicated a great king would be born in Judea that had spiritual significance. So there's nothing new about these abilities. It's just that a lot of people refuse to believe them, are afraid of them because people always do not understand and fear what they do not understand. And just some people, with all due respect to stupid people, are stupid.
So like you mentioned before, you're a published author, right? On top of all this.
Yes.
And you've written on the topics of both law and metaphysics, and you have a best-selling book called Never Letting Go, and it's about healing grief with help from the other side.
Correct.
And extrasensory perception, is it real? I don't know. I'm just trying to have a good, interesting conversation with an unconventional person. And when I say unconventional, I mean it in the best way possible. Calling all skeptics and believers alike, meet Mark Anthony.
Hello, I'm Mark Anthony. What's your name? Outstanding. Welcome to the Bobby Pickles Podcast.
Bobby Pickles Podcast. He always says, "That's me." With a look on his face, he'll talk about anything. Tattoos, t-shirts, politics, history, and hot sauce on everything. Bobby Pickles. Pop culture, documentaries, conspiracy theories, sarcasm, and beer. It's a conversation, start listening, cause we're all here. Bobby Pickles Podcast.
That's me. So, Mark Anthony, here the both of us are. We're both in the communication business, although podcasting and poltergeisting do have their subtle differences.
Do they?
Yeah. Another interesting tidbit is that you're my second guest to have attended Oxford University. What did you study there? English common law?
Yes, I actually studied international law, comparative civil liberties, and English common law. And it was groovy, baby.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. I mean, God, Oxford University. And then you got a law degree here,
yes,
right?
I did.
Where, Georgia? Mercer?
Mercer University, a fine Southern law school, part of what we call the Kudzu League.
What kind of law do you practice? Like, you were saying it a little bit before.
I'm criminal defense, and I've done personal injury, and I've been a prosecutor. And being a psychic medium, I guess what that means is I chase stolen ambulances driven by drunk drivers who want to talk to dead people.
At least you can say it for me without me having to come up with some kind of witty, sarcastic thing.
Well, I've heard, with a name like Mark Anthony, all right, it used to be Cleopatra jokes, now it's all J-Lo jokes.
Or
okay?
what's the guy's name? Oh, Michael Anthony, the bassist of Van Halen.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, so between a name like that, being a psychic and a lawyer, and it's funny because everything that I do draws an immediate reaction. I mean, I know some people, that if you went up and say, well, what do you do for a living? I'm a plumber. Well, that's nice. What do you do? I'm a lawyer. Oh, my God, I hate lawyers. Or I'm a psychic. Oh, you're doing the work of the devil. I mean, it's like, whatever.
Wow. You're like,
it always gets some kind of reaction. Yeah.
They're actually, both lawyer and medium could be misconstrued as work of the devil.
Being the devil's advocate. And the thing is, it's a complete misinterpretation and misunderstanding of the Bible. And I don't really want to get into a whole, because I am a Christian. I was groomed to be a Catholic priest.
You were?
Yes, I pray every day.
How? But if your parents were in this medium psychic kind of...
My dad was a Baptist. My mother was a devout Catholic. But we realize that these gifts, these abilities, are truly a gift from God. But I don't want to get all woohoo about my gift from God, because we all have gifts from God. I mean, Bobby, what you do is a gift from God. You are a communicator. You are someone who provokes people to
Tell me
think.
more. Yeah, I know.
Well, it's the truth, though. I mean, and for those of you who are parents, being a good parent is a gift from God, because you're entrusted with the life of another human being, and you shape and mold that person. Being a good listener. How many times, you're from New York.
It's hard to be a good listener.
Yes, it is.
It's the hardest thing about podcasting or interviewing anybody, radio, whatever it is, doesn't matter what kind of interviewing, is listening. Or actually just being in a relationship, it's listening. Actually, the most important aspect about communication is listening, right? Not you yapping, but listening to the other person yap.
And that is such an important point, because how many times have you been on a subway or a bus or just sitting somewhere, and a perfect stranger tells you his or her life story? Mm-hmm. And if you actually show some interest and some compassion in their plight, you never know if you have just saved that person's life, because they may have been so depressed thinking nobody cared that they were going to go home and put a bullet in their head.
Yeah.
And so we all have gifts from God, and being a good listener and just being a kind person is a gift from God.
I agree with you. But irregardless, here the two of us are, held up at this meditation center in Vero Beach. I always ask my guests to meet me somewhere that is either iconic or important to them in some way. So, Mark, why here? Why Spark of Divine Meditation Center?
The Spark of Divine Meditation Center, it's more than just a meditation center. It's a community gathering. And a lot of people that are spiritual, not necessarily religious, and people who are religious as well as spiritual like to come here. And Beth Frank's the owner. She's just awesome. And so she's created a community focus. And I like this place. I've done a number of events here where I come and do gallery readings and lectures. and it just has a really good positive energy and vibe.
It is a nice feel. We're chilling, right? We're in this large meditation room. Very good acoustics, I believe, for audio recording. And we're in a little circle. And we have some of your people amongst us, right?
Yes.
None of your past live people, your current live people.
Well, I don't know. They could have been there last time.
Yeah. Are there any people hanging out? I mean, can you tell?
There's always people hanging out. And it's funny because people always ask me about reincarnation too. So,
reincarnation is interesting. Like you're Sharon, like you're Catholic. I'm Catholic, right?
Yeah.
And it's something about growing up Catholic that you can't get away from, right? It's just ingrained. I mean, I went to Catholic school my whole life. I don't know how.
Yeah, when I was in law school, my roommate was Jewish, and he was so funny because he goes, being Catholic seems like it's a lot like being Jewish. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, it's so much of a hassle. Unless you're born it, don't do it.
Yeah, but on top of this, so you were ingrained in some kind of belief system.
Yes.
You can still have the spirituality part of it, which is, I think, separate. I mean, really. I mean, it should be part of it.
Think about our Catholic religion. We have saints. We have angels.
Yeah.
We have different levels to the other side because we have heaven.
It doesn't feel like
we have purgatory, which is where Protestants go.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
And then we had limbo, but they canceled limbo.
The Protestants learn their lesson, and then they're allowed in afterwards, right? They got to stay in there for
turning their back on Holy Mother Church. But then the Greek Orthodox also have purgatory, and they think we go to it because we're not real Christians according to them. So the funny thing is,
they all think that. All of these people,
everybody is so convinced that their one way is the only way, and I really like what His Holiness Pope John Paul II said. He said that pious Muslims can go to heaven, pious Hindus can go to heaven, pious Buddhists can go to heaven.
I know I was like an English major and everything, but what is the definition of pious?
Pious is someone who follows the true teachings of your religion and the true teachings of all the great religions, whether it's Taoism as taught by Lao Tzu, whether it's Hinduism brought down through the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita, whether it's
so whatever
Buddhism.
You have, whatever you're in, if you truly believe in that genuinely, then you're a good person. You're going to move on to
the point of all religions is to divorce domination of yourself from self-centeredness. And if you think about it, when you use religion like people like Osama bin Laden have, and that, what's his name, Ahmadinejad in Iran, and a lot of the evangelicals like Pat Robertson and other people like that, when you use a religion as a pretext or a moral justification for anger, bigotry, hatred, and violence, then it ceases to be about God and about being spiritual, and it becomes all about your ego, which is edging God out.
And monetary.
Yes, and it all becomes about money.
Pat Roberts, he's just offensive at times. I've seen him just say so many crazy things.
I think Pat Robertson is so in love with himself that it all begins and ends with him. And he throws God in as a way to justify what he wants to do. So all I can say to him is we must forgive him. But my point is that all the great religions teach essentially the same thing. Treat other people the way you want to be treated. Do not make yourself and your selfish desires as the center of the universe. Pope John Paul II obviously understood that. The current Pope Francis understands that. The Dalai Lama understands that. And so when you get on the higher levels with these religious people, and I love it when I used to see John Paul sitting down with the Dalai Lama and with Hindu leaders and the more moderate Islamic leaders, and they start talking God and stop talking culture and politics. They're all talking the same thing. A lot of my friends are fundamentalist Christians, and a good friend of mine...
Obviously, you live in Florida.
Well, I live in Florida, and a good friend of mine who's a Baptist minister, and I said, well, I know what I'm doing according to your religion is evil and all that. He goes, referencing the book of Deuteronomy. He says, Mark, the book of Deuteronomy says I can sell my daughter into slavery. No, we don't. Neither of us drink. Okay. And he said that the book of Deuteronomy authorizes me to sell my daughter into slavery and for me to murder my neighbor should he work on the Sabbath. He goes, we really need to stop taking that as the gospel truth, he goes pun intended, and look at it as the time frame that it was written in. Those were moral and dietary codes written thousands of years ago that are interesting to look at but don't necessarily apply today.
Don't you feel like all religions, all these vast religions, not just the Christian sects, or whatever, Judaism, everything. It's just like kind of like we have different languages. It's just a different expression of the same thing.
Yes, religion is a form of a language. Long story short, God exists in spite of religion, not because of it. And what I like to try to impress upon people is that we live in the material world, and we are finite. Everything we know, everything we have, everything we experience has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And we tend to think that time moves in one direction. We're born, we grow old, and we die. The other side, heaven, God, is infinite. No beginning, no ending. Energy is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred.
Where do we go?
So we tend to put a human face on God to anthropomorphize something we cannot understand. In other words, we're wearing a finite set of glasses when trying to understand the infinite. That's not necessarily a negative thing or a bad thing. It's like every day you and I walk into a room and flip on a switch and lights come on. What is electricity? Nobody really understands. We know it's a form of energy. We know that we can sort of harness it, but nobody really knows what it is, but we know it's there. It's the same thing with God.
Why would you put a magnet next to it? Things start going like this. Electromagnetism, it's so crazy.
Well, yeah, and what you're doing there is you're taking electromagnetism, taking one form of energy, and then its reaction converts the electromagnetic energy into strictly electrical energy. So there, energy transfer. It's like when you said earlier that podcasting and poltergeisting are different. Are they really? Now, let's think about making a phone call to your favorite Aunt Martha who lives in Liverpool, England. Think about it. Your brain is sending an electrical impulse to your lungs, which exhale air. Now we have mechanical energy, which is causing your vocal cords to vibrate. Sound wave energy now comes out and hits a plate in the microphone of your phone, which vibrates. So that mechanical energy then gets transmitted to electrical energy, which then gets transmitted to radio wave energy, which hits a tower, which then transmits it once again into the form of electrical energy through several miles of wires, goes into an antenna, gets beamed up to a network of satellites. Those satellites then take that radio wave energy, transmitting it down to a tower, which converts it back into electrical wave energy, which goes through a tower, then hits Aunt Martha's cell phone. So then the plate in her earpiece begins to vibrate, making that mechanical energy, which converts that into sound wave energy, hitting her eardrum, which vibrates, causing the stapes bones in her ear to hit the eighth cranial nerve, transmitting that sound wave energy into electrical energy, which goes into her brain, which then translates it into, "Hi, Aunt Martha." And people think that what I do is somehow bizarre or weird, when every single day we pick up telephones and make these miraculous technological calls. And then we get aggravated when the call drops out. Okay?
Well, that sounds like a Louis C.K. bit.
No, that's a Mark Anthony bit.
Louis C.K. is his great thing. Is like, humans are crazy. You're like, oh, phone doesn't work. It's like you're talking to somebody while you're walking around.
Or worse, driving.
And then he has another thing where it goes into
you're drinking a Starbucks at the same time. Yeah. Hi, Starbucks.
He has one more thing where it goes into the plane waiting for an airplane, and then, oh, you've been delayed for 2 hours? Oh, you're flying through the sky like a bird.
Yeah,
and you're going to be like, and we take so many things for granted. Anyway, that's totally.
I think it was 1863 or 73, Jules Verne wrote, "Around the World in 80 Days."
Okay.
Do you know how ticked off people would be if they had to wait 8 hours because the flight was delayed, or even 80 minutes for their around-the-world flight? So now we can go around the world in a day. And so then people say, oh, well, I don't believe what you do. Well, number one, it's been around since the beginning of time. Number two is, just because the technology, quote unquote, doesn't exist in the human-made sense, in other words, mediums, we are the technology, but just because the actual technology doesn't exist yet to prove this, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Don't they have some kind of stuff like these ghost hunters? They have some kind of Ghostbusters, right? Then they have the
They
talked about
in
ectoplasm too, didn't they?
Yeah, and my manager Rocky's here. She and I have been on several ghost hunts because at
have?
a lot of paranormal conferences, I've been asked to be a guest speaker. And a lot of the guys from the TV shows are there, and then they do their K2 meters and all that kind of cool stuff.
Do you believe any of that stuff? Does any of that stuff work?
You know, I was skeptical about it, and then one of them, I was walking by, and, you know, you hear voices come and go, Mark, Mark. So I turned around, I walked up, and I heard, love you, bro. My best friend committed suicide 3 years ago, and it was his voice that came out of the thing.
Are you serious? How do they make these things that pick?
What
you
they
say
do,
they did. No, there's nothing that's around that proves
no,
it.
they just tune into frequency. And I said, is that Marty? And he goes, love you, bro.
Can I share with you an experience?
Sure.
I had a couple experiences, right? Well, my father, okay, so this is the one. So I live in New York City, right? Been there for like 3 years now or so. But before that, I was from Florida, and I had an insurance agency down here. We sold health, life, and variable annuities. And I used to work with all these Department of Children and Families all throughout the area. And my brother worked for me, my dad worked for me, and all my high school friends. So I set up all these little areas all over the state of Florida. We had a lot of business in West Palm and things like that. My father had to move out there for a little while, and we got him like a townhouse. And we just did a sublease for these older people who lived in New York or something like that, right? So anyway, we get him in there. A couple weeks go by. Him and this other guy, Aaron, who worked for me, they were both staying in the different rooms, and they were just working at the location that we had here. And my father started experiencing, like, ghost stuff. I swear to God, I have never seen this man freak out like this. He was freaking out, okay? He had, like, a real poltergeist situation. His cell phone, all of a sudden, it was in his pocket, but then he fell asleep, and now it's underneath a rug, and the doors propped over it or something like that, or all of the paintings turned around and everything turned around everywhere. And he took pictures of it and sent it to me. And I actually got a ghost hunter. I hired one and had them go there and set up. But it was weird. I was going to Italy like the next day or something like that, and I came back and I totally didn't follow up with the people. And I never found out what happened truly or anything like that. But they did go to this place and stuff. But irregardless of all that stuff, the fact still remains, this is somebody that's close to me, and he wouldn't act like the way he was. He was acting like it for like a couple weeks straight, and he would deal with it and then go to work and then come back and deal with it more and have some more kind of crazy stories about what just happened. And it culminated in he just got all this stuff, put it all inside of the car, and left in like the middle of the night. And he was like, I'm not going back there. I'm never going back there again.
Attitudes are changing. According to a CBS and BeliefNet poll, now 75% of Americans believe in paranormal phenomenon. And a religious poll by the Pew Organization found that within the last 20 years, the number of people who used to say that they had an interaction with a ghost or a discarnate intelligence has more than doubled. It's not that this phenomenon is on the rise. It's that now people are able to admit it without being chastised and discriminated against. Mm-hmm. These things have always existed. It's just now we're beginning to acknowledge them. And once again, it comes down to how do we frame it. St. Clare of Assisi is the patron saint of television, yet she lived 800 years before television was invented. What happened was she was a follower of St. Anthony of Padua and St. Francis of Assisi, and she was a very devout nun and well thought of and a great intellectual, and she got so ill she could no longer go to church. So she prayed for a vision that she could see what was happening in Mass, so she could see in real time what was going on. Mm-hmm. And this was well known and well documented throughout Assisi in Italy. She was a remote viewer, and that's why in 1958 Pope Pius XII designated her the patron saint of television once television became very well known. Now people
viewing.
People laugh at that. Remote viewing is where you're able to take your consciousness away from your body to observe something happening in real time.
Like what happens when you're like about on the deathbed kind of, or you're getting operated on, and people come up.
No, that's a near-death experience.
They look at themselves. No, that's not.
Or is it
like Edgar Casey? Kind
hold on, let me finish. Okay. All right. So remote viewing is where you're voluntarily able to move your consciousness to observe things in real time. And people laugh at that, but for the fact that the CIA, the KGB, British MI6, the French Secret Service, the Chinese, and the North Koreans all have remote viewers in their psychic warfare divisions. And over the past 40 years, the U.S. has spent tens of millions of dollars on remote viewers. That movie, Men Who Stare at Goats, is loosely based on a real event. So the Vatican has been aware of people with psychic and mediumistic abilities for centuries, but it's how you frame it. St. Clare, a devout nun, was receiving visions of the Holy Spirit, where then about 100 years later, Joan of Arc, who was not a member of the clergy, who heard voices from the other side, specifically St. Margaret, St. Catherine, and St. Michael, was convicted of witchcraft and burned at the stake. So it's how we frame it that makes it either positive or negative.
One thing about this poltergeist thing that I was talking about with my father, though, while I was on the phone setting up the ghost hunt or whatever, right, I was talking to this lady, and she was telling me how there's different poltergeists. She said there's some that go after somebody and then they'll, like, follow them. Have you ever heard any of that? There's differences?
While I respect my colleagues in those fields, I think a lot of people like to swim in the pool of primitive superstitious nonsense.
Okay.
There are three different types of hauntings. One is where a spirit returns to a location because he or she chooses to. Secondly, matter retains energy. So let's say a murder occurs in a place and there's an energetic echo. It is no more a sentient being than a vapor trail is a jet. It's merely a residual echo. And the third is where it is believed that this is a person that is somehow trapped between this side and the other side, which I don't believe, because one of our gifts from God is free will, and the second that our body physically ceases to function, our spirit returns to its immortal state. So therefore, it enters the collective consciousness of the other side, is fully aware of what's going on, and is not trapped here nor there. Where a lot of the ghost hunters go wrong, and we saw this at the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park in Colorado. Room 217 is supposed to be the most haunted room. You know, Jim Carrey was staying there, ran out of the room screaming. I think he was doing it as a publicity stunt for Dumb and Dumber. Way to go, Jim. And the ghost hunters, everything's a demon. There's a demon. There's a demon in a sugar bowl. Don't sit on the toilet because a demon might come up and bite you in the wazoo, you know. And so they're so focused on negativity and evil. So there we are during an investigation in room 217, and there's about a dozen people in there, including the ghost hunters, and they got all their equipment set up, and all of a sudden everything beep, 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 starts going off the scale. And literally the shadow begins to form on the wall, and they go, "It's one of the shadow people. It's a demon!" And everyone screams and runs the other side.
Like in the movie Ghost.
So I walk right into it. I walk right up to it, and they're going, "Mark, don't do this." And Rocky's like, "Mark, I don't know if you should be doing this." And I said, "This is a grandfather coming through. I feel that he died of a heart attack. This is a recent death, and he's with this big, fat, ginger-colored kitty cat." And this woman starts to cry. She emerges from the other side of the room and goes, "My grandfather died 3 weeks ago. My cat just died. He was a ginger cat." Anyway, and so I'm conveying all these messages from her grandfather. And she's hugging me and God blessing me. And so then after about a half hour, they rotate these people out to another location within the Stanley. They had about a dozen locations where they're doing poltergeist investigations. The ghost hunter was livid. "Don't you dare ever do that." I go, "Why?" "Well, I don't want you doing that." I go, "Oh, so everything needs to be scary?" I go, "You are supposed to be a scientist. And a true scientist is objective and uses a scientific method, and instead you're making the scary so you can sell K2
Do you get a lot of
meters.
people approaching you, these guys, wanting you to assist them with ghost hunts and be part of it?
All the time.
Yeah?
All the time. And what was fascinating, the Stanley Hotel also has a team of paranormal investigators on staff, and when the conference was over, they came to me and they said, "Mark, thank you. Your opinions and your sensations coincide with our conclusions that these are not demonic or evil entities, but they're spirits coming through." Now, why is the Stanley so haunted? It happens to sit on a huge piece of granite loaded with quartz crystals. It's a major amplifier. The first radio was a chunk of quartz crystal with a copper wire running low-level electricity through it. Well, we got a whole mountain of it here. So
Is that why crystals are,
they have a vibration? They're an amplifier. We all have a vibration. Everything in the universe, physics has proven everything in the universe has a vibration to it. Some things are an amplifier. And there's certain crystals, like in the pineal gland of our brain, has magnetite and calcite crystals. Earlier, you brought up a really fascinating point about electricity being magnets. Well, magnetite has an electromagnetic field, and that's a crystal inside a gland in our brain, the pineal gland. Calcite is a form of a quartz crystal. So within the pineal gland, you have all electricity flowing through here. We have an antenna and a receiver and a radio all inside our heads. And that's how psychic activity works. It isn't hocus pocus.
You can turn it off and on, you say?
You can turn it off and on.
Can you turn it on and read my friend over here?
I probably could.
That would be awesome.
So what happens is that, let me ask you this. You ever had a dream where a deceased loved one came to talk to you?
No, I didn't. I did have something happen, though.
Okay, go ahead.
To myself. Like, my grandfather passed away around 9/11 time. That's just when it was. But we went up to clean all the stuff in his house and sell it. It was just me and my mom rummaging through all the stuff. And then all of a sudden she goes, "Bobby, look at my finger." And it was from right here up. It was white. Like somebody was holding it like that. And it was my grandfather. Her father was holding her freaking right in front of me. I was like this. Whoa, my God. Holy shit, like that's crazy. That was proof enough for me. After seeing that, I love my grandfather, and he was holding her finger right there.
So he was reaching out from the other side to make contact.
Yeah.
And so the reason I was asking about dreams is what happens when you go into the dream state, your pineal gland changes your brainwave frequency and you go into the alpha state. And on the alpha-theta border is when psychic activity, mediumistic activity is theorized to occur. And that's why a lot of people get dreams where loved ones come and speak to them. Mm-hmm. Mediums, for some reason, are able to do this while in the conscious state. Maybe I got an extra calcite or magnetite chip or some bizarre genetic sequence, who knows? But apparently it runs in my family. And so when people start going, work a devil, it's like, no, first off, there is no devil. If you want to see the devil, look within. Whenever you do something evil, negative, vicious, or aggressive, it's not because you're acting out of love for another person. It is because you're acting out of completely self-centered, self as center of the universe desires. Mm-hmm. When Jesus went into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights and was tempted by Satan, well, Buddha went into the desert for 49 days and 49 nights, sat under the Bodhisattva tree, and was tempted by Lord Mara, the god of death, or
I know
whatever.
Some Eastern stuff. Yeah. Buddha.
These are parables where both Buddha and Jesus were from royal families. Jesus through the line of David, Buddha was a prince. And they had the bloodline, the charisma, the intelligence, the energetic abilities to have really become.
Don't you love the Buddhism story, though?
Well, yeah.
It's just a regular guy, right?
Well, he wasn't a regular guy.
Well, no, but I mean, he was a human, though. I mean, like God, like Jesus was supposedly the son of God.
But what I'm getting at is both of them taught us that by rejecting self-centeredness, that's when you connect with the divine and the love energy of God. So the devil is not some jerk with a pitchfork running around going, remember in Animal House when the girl passes out and the guy's looking at her and the devil goes, go ahead, do her. And they go, no, for shame, don't. All right, and that's what people actually think that happens, which is why it's so funny. Okay,
it does happen.
It does happen because you are the one making it happen. Not the devil. The devil, as we know the devil, has evolved through the centuries. Outside of Jerusalem, there's a valley called Gehenna, and for dishonored people and criminals that could not afford burial plots, they would throw their bodies into burning lime pits, a.k.a. hellfire and brimstone. So Christianity and Islam incorporated that, and then the Norse god Loki, the god of mischief, really is our devil, because the last part of Europe to be Christianized were the Viking and Germanic areas, northern Germanic areas. So that's how the devil grew up over the centuries. And then the European kings, who were sitting on their thrones for the divine right of kings, of course they want there to be a devil. Okay? If you give me and the church, but mostly me, money, then you're doing the work of God. If not, devil's going to get you. Okay, when in essence...
Pat Robertson.
Well, he's an idiot, And Pat, if you're hearing that, I'm sorry, but you're an idiot. Okay? And the fact remains, the devil is when you give in to your selfishness, your lust, your primeval, your aggression, your animalistic desires. And that's when you inflict harm upon others and do greedy, self-centered, evil things. Mm-hmm. Gandhi knew this. Mother Teresa knew this. Pope Francis knows this. Jesus certainly lived that example. And when we start realizing that we are the ones in control of our fate, not some demonic entity.
Do you think Pope Francis really knows this, though? You ever heard of Petrus Romanus, Peter the Roman?
Yeah.
Yeah, but isn't that came from some kind of vision or whatever? I remember hearing about that. The guy, he got the vision of all the popes.
So if it's the end of the world, so what?
Well, maybe it's not the end of the world. Maybe it's just the end of organized religion as we know it, and it's a different understanding of what spirituality.
I like what the Hindus teach. If the world ends, don't worry about it. Another one will reform.
Right.
And we'll all come
because
back.
Energy never
is neither created nor destroyed, only transferred. And the Hindus seem to realize that 5,000 years ago. So people say, well, I'm not afraid of dying, and nobody should be afraid of dying. The how part. Okay, the how part.
Yeah, the how
I'll
part
give you.
sucks.
Yeah, the how part sucks. Cancer, sucks.
Yeah.
Diseases, eaten by sharks, burning alive. Okay, that's all, being tortured and all that.
Do you believe in euthanization? Human euthanization? Come on. I mean, just pull the plug. We do it to our animals. My mother just had to do it last week to one of our
Do
dogs.
I believe in putting people to death? I wouldn't do it.
I mean, have you ever asked some of these people how they went out? Was it that bad? Was it that sufferable? They still suffer, or what?
Well, in Never Letting Go, I do talk about suicide. In my next book, I talk quite a bit about suicide. There's no one size fits all for those who commit suicide, but everything we do comes back on you. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. As it says in Galatians, God shall not be mocked, for what a man sow, he shall reap. So whatever you do, there are repercussions. People that commit suicide inflict tremendous pain and suffering upon their loved ones. If you commit suicide as a form of revenge, because let me tell you, leaving that type of regret and guilt upon somebody, that's pretty self as center of the universe behavior, ergo evil. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be a lot of karmic repercussions for that. Somebody, and I did a reading the other day for a gentleman, he was coming in and out of dementia, and when he was in a lucid interval, he took a weapon and took his own life. And he came through to say, I could not face being a raving lunatic, and I didn't want to do that to you. This was to his wife. It was very difficult for me to convey this to his wife, but she understood. However, does that mean that he's elevating to the higher frequencies of the other side right away, or must he atone for
purgatory.
The pain, a purgatory type of dimension? But you see, are you a parent?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Your parents love you more than anything in the world. They could never, no matter what you did, condemn you to solitary confinement forever. God is the most loving parent of all and would never condemn any of us to an eternity of suffering. However, there is reincarnation. Mm-hmm. So be careful what you do and how you treat people, because next time you may be the one on the you-know-what end of the stick.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. What do you think about reading my friend over here? Let's do it. You think? Can we?
Give it a shot.
Turn it on?
Okay. What I do as a medium is I open up to frequency, and it's very possible that more than one person could be coming through. And first I'll get a gender, then I'll get an idea of the relationship to you. It could be on your generation's brother, sister, cousin, spouse, friend, above that parent, aunt, uncle, below that child, niece, nephew, above your parent, grandparent, above that great-grandparent. As thrilling as it would be to talk to our Civil War relatives, their motivation to talk to you isn't that great, because the people that come through are going to be connected to you. I give pieces of evidence. I will ask this question a lot. Does this make sense? Does this make sense? Do you recognize this? Does this ring a bell? And let me know. And if something sparks with you, let me know right away, because it doesn't matter if I understand it. It only does if you do. That's why it's coming through me for your benefit. Okay? Makes sense?
It. Yeah, totally.
All right. I like to start with a prayer, because I believe that prayer raises vibrational frequency. O God, make us an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let us sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine God, grant that we may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
You have 6 people around you. First one coming in is an older woman, and what I get with her is I'm getting this terrible pressure and pain in my upper chest. Now, I'm not saying that it's cardiovascular yet, but I'm feeling a lot of heat and a lot of problems, okay? Like in an arc here and an arc here. It's like at the top of her chest, top of her breast. And I feel also a numbness and a tingling in her arm where either she was having an arthritic condition or she was getting very weak and just losing the strength in her hands. I'm also feeling what I call or what is peripheral neuropathy. I'm feeling a tingling and a numbness in my feet. Also, there's a heaving sensation. This poor lady was pretty sick prior to passing. Does this make sense to you?
Possibly, yes.
Okay, is this a grandmother?
Yes.
Yeah.
I never met her, though.
Oh, you never met her?
No, she died about 6 months before I was born.
Okay. All right, so this woman is coming through. Interesting. Does the color, a light blue, powder blue color make sense to you?
No.
Okay. Let me work with this a bit. Roses are red, violets are blue, sugar is sweet, and so are you. Okay, well, that's very cliche, but I keep hearing that. I keep hearing that getting repeated from her. Hold on. Five one. Does number 51 make sense to you? 51 could be, the number 51 could also be 15. It could stand for May. It could also stand for May. May make sense to you in what way?
That's when that was the month she passed away.
There we go. All right, so that's her identifier to let us know that that's her. Now, let's see why she's coming through to you. What is the significance of strawberries? Do you like strawberries?
I do.
Okay, because she's showing me strawberries.
Yeah.
And what it is, when a spirit shows us stuff like this, it's to let, you may not have met her, but she is certainly aware of you. Okay? Dreamer, nothing but a dreamer. I keep hearing that song. What she's saying about you is not only are you a dreamer, but you're a doer. You dream about things, you visualize things, and she says what she likes about you is the practical aspect of taking your dreams and hopes and making it a reality. She says you're really good about not just sitting on your duff.
That's great.
Okay, there's a male coming through, and I keep wanting to go, a lot of coughing, a lot of difficulty breathing, huge cardiovascular issues, lungs, and he's blinking. Okay, the blinking sensation to me indicates coming in and out of consciousness, difficulty with lucidity prior to passing, most likely from a pain medication.
Yeah.
Does this make sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, he is very close to you. He's connected to you through your male side of the family. Does this make sense? Is
Correct.
this your dad?
That's my grandpa.
Your grandpa. Okay. This guy you knew, though.
Yes.
Okay. And I don't mean to say it like that. What I'm getting at is that there's a real close emotional connection, and even though he was your grandfather, he feels almost more like a dad in a lot of ways. Okay. Really, really loved you a lot. February, month of February, he's drawing me to. February is indicative of Valentine's Day, which could be a V name, also the number 14, 14. So it could be 14, that could be 41, that could be January, that could be April.
Okay.
Think about that one for a minute. Because, all right, other than him, is there significance to you for February?
I mean, I got into some trouble in February, but...
well, there we go.
Okay.
Okay, so when I say I'm being drawn to a specific time frame, if there is a significant event there, please let me know, because your grandfather is aware of this, which is why he's bringing it up. Okay? Hook, line, and sinker. Okay. There's a situation he's addressing where you relied on something somebody else told you or led you to believe, and you took it hook, line, and sinker. Does this make sense to you?
I mean, I'm sure, yes, but I can't think of one particular circumstance.
I'm now seeing candy apples. Candy apples. Wait, hold on before you start shaking your head. Candy apples also draw me to the month of September. Does the month of September have significance to you?
No, it doesn't.
All right, think about that one. All right, what about candy apples? No candy apples.
No.
All right. When an image comes through, it could have more than one level of significance. A candy apple generally for me means September. It also means taking someone to a fair or a carnival, like a park, that type of thing. So I don't know if your grandfather, did he do that with you?
Yeah, he did.
Well, then that's what he's talking about. Okay. I take this one step at a time because one image can have several levels of significance to this. He says you don't like to get dizzy. You don't like to get dizzy. Is there like rides you don't like to go on?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what he's talking about. Because the dizziness thing, you don't like at all. He says that he loved you and adored you because you're a girly girl. And he just got the biggest kick out of that. Plus, he couldn't stand going on those rides either, so he was glad that you'd bring that up, okay? He says the fun thing about you is all he had to do was spend time with you, and that was entertaining. So he didn't have to go out of his way to do extravagant things for you. All right, now I'm tasting peppermint. Peppermint usually brings me into the month of December. Yes, I know Christmas is in December, but other than, hey, we love Christmas, is there a significance to the month of December?
Absolutely.
In what way?
December is my birthday, and it's also the month my father passed away.
Okay, that's what's known as a multiple meaning message because the peppermint brings us to December. That's, you said, your birthday and when your father passed away.
Correct.
Was that his son that we're talking about?
Yes.
This grandfather?
Yes.
Okay. Now, there's another mail coming through, and I'm feeling another pressure pain right here in my chest. Does this make sense with your dad?
Yes.
It's almost like a hook. It's weird. It's like a
massive
hook.
heart attack.
Massive heart attack. Yeah, it feels like someone took a hook and just stuck it into my chest. All right. Go, 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 go. Was your dad like super high energy?
Yeah.
All right. It's like go, 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 go. All right. So dad's popping off the scale. Vitamin B, vitamin B, vitamin B. Do you take vitamin B?
He took tons of vitamins.
He took tons of vitamins.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's, he showed me the vitamins. It's like with your dad, there was never a dull moment. He had two speeds, on and off, okay? When he was awake, he was on. And he says, sorry about the drill sergeant thing. Was he ever in the military?
No, he was actually a teacher for Taekwondo, and he
like
made me take it until I became a black belt, and there came a point where I was so tired of doing it. He wouldn't let me quit.
Dojo. Go,
Dojo.
go, dojo.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what he's doing. And the drill sergeant bit was the way he made... Funny, your grandfather loved you for being a girly girl. Your dad wanted to turn you into Xeno warrior princess. Okay? Aquamarine. I'm seeing... What's that color? There's a stone. Aquamarine.
It's my birthstone, probably.
Okay, what month are you born in?
December.
December? What's December?
It's like a light blue.
It's a light blue?
Yeah.
Okay.
It has a name, but I forget what it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Who's the Aquarius? There's an Aquarius. Or the Aquarian time frame. The Aquarian time frame is around January 20th to February 20th. Is there a time frame? Is there a significance to that time frame?
Not that I know.
All right. Think about that one. Let's get back to your dad now. I know this sounds corny, but this is what he wants me to sing to you. Heaven, I'm in heaven. Da 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 da. Wait, hold on. Da 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 da. And we're dancing cheek to cheek. Okay, was your dad a dancer or something?
He was a musician.
He was a musician.
Yes.
Okay, because I'm hearing that song, Heaven, I'm in Heaven. All right, one, that has two levels of significance. Obviously, he was a musician. Secondly, he wants you to know he's in heaven. It's real important that you understand that. And what's with lacing your shoes? Is there something about your shoes and laces? Or what about with him? There's something about laces on shoes.
No.
All right, hold on. I'm going to keep working with that. What about lace? Lace? Any lace?
My name was going to be Lacey.
Hello.
But they chose Abby.
Okay, we'll see. We've never met, right?
Never.
How would I possibly know that?
You
Now,
wouldn't.
let me explain to you what just happened. I saw laces on shoes because what happens is a spirit transmits energy in vibration so that I get a concept. The concept was laces on shoes, which then transformed into lace, which then you correctly identified as your name was going to be Lacey,
Yes.
but they chose Abby instead.
They did.
Okay, so I will leave
God.
that with you. God bless you.
Thank you.
So that was interesting. So that's how you pick up images. You kind of just get some kind of image of something, and then you have to kind of figure out what that is they're trying to say to you. Laces, lace, whatever.
Well,
lace.
yeah, that's how it works sometimes. Sometimes I may have just heard Lacey. It just depends, because what happens is spirits are energy, and a spirit, they don't speak English or French or Chinese or any human language, nor do they communicate the way we do. This is not texting or instant messaging. A spirit is energy, and he or she sends waves of frequency at me, and that vibration interacts with my electrical field, goes into my brain, and then my brain takes that and translates that vibration into recognizable concepts based on my memories, feelings, cultural references, and emotions. So that's what's going on, and that's why a lot of times it takes a little bit of work. It's like when we did the peppermint, okay? When I taste peppermint, well, maybe somebody likes peppermint, but that could also be, and that usually is for me the month of January, and there were two levels of significance in the month of December. There was a birthday and a passing.
Mark, when we decided to meet over here at Spark of Divine, I had mentioned to your manager, you mentioned that your manager is present as well, Rocky. She's nice. But I was going to say, hey, why don't we meet in Casadega? Is that the name of the place or whatever? Is that pronounced I didn't even know it, because I was trying to come up.
Well, the thing is, Casadega is 3 hours from here.
What is it, though?
Casadega was founded in 1890 by George Colby as a spiritualist camp. And spiritualism
It was founded when? I'm sorry.
1890.
1890, okay.
And spiritualism was a religion, a belief system that started in the UK and the US around the 1850s. Mary Todd Lincoln, the First Lady, big-time spiritualist. Queen Victoria was too. In fact, when Prince Albert died, Queen Victoria met with mediums on a regular basis to keep in touch with her beloved Prince Albert. So spiritualists founded this small town called Casadega. So it's been a haven for psychics and mediums for quite a long time, and it's had a good reputation. About a dozen years, or probably longer now, the Wiccans came. So it's very interesting because Main Street, which is this it's probably just a one-lane road. On one side are the Wiccans, and on the other side is a spiritualist camp, and they don't like each other, and it's very interesting.
Yeah, that's weird.
And I get along with pretty much all of them. I mean, when I go there, they all know who I am, and I don't have a problem with the Wiccans and certainly the spiritualists. Although I am not a member of the Spiritualist Church, I am still a Catholic. I call myself a spiritual Catholic because, in Britain, the NSU, the National Spiritualist Union, they're the ones kind of that have set forth the protocol and regulation of psychics and mediums and that. So while I respect all of them, and I respect all religions.
Like when you were preparing for the reading just now, you said a Catholic prayer. It's a prayer I know from Catholic
Prayer of St.
Catholicism,
Francis.
right? Yeah.
Yes. I believe that prayer raises vibrational frequency, and so basically that's my way of flipping on my switch. I'm letting all the spirit world know, okay, I'm doing this now.
Yeah, I'm tuning in.
I don't know if it's necessary. I mean, obviously I can just do a reading without it, but that's the protocol that I like because I approach my mediumship as it is a sacrament. It has been given to me. I am the custodian of this gift, and I must treat it with reverence and with respect. And for me, starting with a prayer is the appropriate and honorable way to approach this. And when I was in England and I was studying mediumship with a lot of mediums, we were talking about that.
You studied at Oxford.
I also
right?
studied at the Arthur Findlay College for the Advancement of Psychic Science in England.
When did you do that?
That was
separate.
A few years back. What it is, they've been studying mediumship for centuries. and I wanted to get their take on things. And it was very, very helpful, very instructive. And we were talking about that, and it was interesting being in an all-psychic environment. I mean, everybody there is either a psychic or a medium or both. And, we're joking that, people outside were muggles, but the fact remains, none of us looked at it as we have a superpower. We all view this as this is a gift we have been given custodianship of, and it must be treated with respect. That's why, like, when I go to parties and things, so come on, Mark, do our reading. It's like, oh, great, yeah, this is an appropriate venue. Everyone's wasted. All right, everyone's drinking. And
you don't
it's
drink,
not.
Mark? You mentioned you don't drink.
No, I don't.
No? You mentioned something about pot before. You didn't condone it or anything like that, but do
I don't.
you condone it?
Well, as a criminal defense lawyer, I prefer it to be illegal because it creates more clients when they get arrested.
I'm going to go ahead and say it. I believe in the legalization of marijuana for recreational use at a federal level. I do. You don't have to say I agree with me.
Well, there's a lot of schools of thought.
There's
the
a lot
problem
of good
is,
things that come from marijuana. It helps you meditate, I believe. It definitely helps me to get into a meditative state. It helps me with my creativity. Genuinely, it does.
Well, I mean, look at the Beatles. It's certainly helped contribute to some of the best music we've ever had.
Yep.
And if George Harrison, if you're listening, I love you.
So, do you believe in astrology? I do. I mean,
I keep an open mind. What's interesting is when you're a medium, people think that I therefore know every paranormal topic. I am aware of astrology. I am aware of astrological phenomenon, but I am not an astrologer. And I've had my chart done by some really good astrologer.
Like when you were in the UK, right? Somebody had to do it.
Yeah, and it was a little almost unnerving, the things they came up with that seemed to be right on point.
Yeah, I always quote this. J.P. Morgan, he said, millionaires don't believe in astrology, billionaires do. And I love that quote, And a lot of influential people took it into account.
Sure.
Adolf Hitler did. That's
unfortunately, or fortunately, the Reagans.
The Reagans did.
Yeah,
right.
Joan Quigley was the astrologer for the Reagan family, and what happened after Ronald Reagan got shot, Nancy Reagan kind of took over his scheduling. And it drove the White House staffers crazy. I had some friends, because I'm a member of the Washington, D.C. bar. A lot of my friends worked on Capitol Hill, and they said Nancy Reagan drove everybody at the White House crazy because she was constantly changing and altering Ronald's schedule because they didn't want him to get hurt again. And she'd meet with Joan Quigley on a daily basis. And so a lot of our presidents, and Woodrow Wilson's psychic advisor was the great Edgar Cayce.
Who I mentioned before, just really quick. Edgar Cayce, he did that, though. Didn't he, transport his body into elsewhere and have visions?
No, Edgar Cayce, there's three different types of mediums. There's physical mediums like Helen Duncan who project ectoplasm.
Okay.
There are mental mediums like myself where I receive my images through a telepathic format and through vibration. And then there are trance mediums, that's what they call them in the UK, but in the United States we call them channelers. And that's what Edgar Cayce was, because Edgar Cayce didn't do readings like I do. He would go into a sleep-like trance state and then voices would speak through him, which would give all sorts of information. And most of the time, Mr. Cayce had no recollection of the information being channeled through him. So what a trance medium does, they're not being possessed or anything like that. What's happening is a third party, a discarnate intelligence, is temporarily taking use of that person's body.
They tune into it and just shut off.
Yes, they do.
And then blah.
Yes, they do. And people say, oh, don't you wish you were a channeler? It's like, no. I like what I do. They come, they talk to me, I talk to you. I don't want anyone crawling around on my brain.
What is this ectoplasm stuff?
Ectoplasm is a fascinating substance, and we all know of it from the movie Ghostbusters. I've been slimed!
Yeah. Slimer.
Dan Aykroyd is a medium.
Yeah, he's into UFOs. He's into all kinds of stuff.
Well, he's also a medium, and he was one of the writers of Ghostbusters.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes. And ectoplasm, I have not seen it, but when I was in England, I talked to people who do this, and it has to be done in clinical conditions, like a room covered in plastic. It's got to be sterile, and the people who observe it sit in the same places because they want to maintain the same energy flow. And ectoplasm is a material liquids and gases which emerge from the medium's body and then form an image of the spirit who is communicating. It's an extremely rare phenomenon. One of the reasons it has to be done in a sterile room is ectoplasm's kind of gooey and sticky, and so let's say there's a thorn or a paper clip or something or a piece of paper laying around, and if the ectoplasm touches it, it can adhere to it, and then it goes back into the medium's brain and can actually kill the medium. So that's why physical mediums are, I mean, I'm a very sensitive person emotionally, vibrationally, and if you're ever buying a house, want to know if it has sick building syndrome, bring me, because within 10 seconds my throat will start filling up, okay? Because it's the sensitivity to frequency and subtle changes that contributes to me being a medium. Physical mediums even more so, and if you touch them while they're doing it, you can actually kill the medium. So that's why it's kept in such a clandestine and very protected environment.
So that's really interesting.
Oh, it's cool stuff. And I keep telling them,
they got some
I want to
pictures
see
of
it
it online and stuff.
Yeah, a lot of the pictures come from the Victorian
1800s
era and all that. And when you look at it, it's like, yeah, I don't know about that.
No?
Well, because, I mean, they look hokey. And just because something's in a picture doesn't mean, I mean, come on. I mean, with CG and all that, well, back then they had double exposure and all types of things. I like to keep an open mind. I look forward
Have you ever
to
seen it?
seeing it.
You
No,
look
but like
forward
I said,
to seeing it.
yeah, people I know have seen it, and one person whom I trust completely, he's a very reputable medium. He goes, and he's English, and he goes, the thing about ectoplasm is it has a rather unpleasant smell. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, it comes out of orifices, if you get my meaning.
What was your undergrad before you went to law school?
The University of Central Florida.
You went to UCF?
Yes, and I did study there through, I took a semester through the Consortium for International Education, and that included extensive study in the Soviet Union, Poland, at the time Czechoslovakia, and East Germany. So it was very interesting going into the
yeah,
communist
a friend of mine
world
who I
at the
grew up
time.
with went to UCF, and she got some kind of major where it's a combination of all kinds of different things.
Yes.
It's like 3 different things or something. Do they just offer that there at UCF? I haven't heard about that a lot of times. But
well, it was a program I had to
Yeah,
sign up for, and I minored. I didn't get the full minor, but I kind of minored in religion.
yeah, it was like a
I've always
bunch of
been-
minors you could have
yeah.
as a major.
Yeah, and so I've always been fascinated in religion and the study of God.
Right.
It's just always been there.
So what did we learn today on our little discussion here at Spark of Divine? Mark?
That Bobby Pickles has the best podcast show, and anyone needs to be listening to that if they want to learn, grow, open their mind, and ask themselves the most important question of all. I don't know, so I better keep an open mind, don't you think?
Absolutely, I believe that. And this gentleman is a medium, and he's very intelligent. He's also an attorney. So obviously you can trust him because, God damn it, this is a great podcast. And I'm sorry for cursing in front of you, Mark. I don't know how religious you are as far as
I've been a
Catholicism.
criminal defense lawyer for a long time. I've heard a few choice
I might
words.
need to hire you at some point, by the way.
But
You're not licensed in New York?
No,
That's okay. When I come down here
Washington
on vacation, you
D.C.
can have it.
In Washington D.C., Florida, and before the U.S. Supreme Court.
Have you ever argued a U.S. Supreme Court case?
Not yet. Friends of mine that do, they say it is the most nerve-wracking thing in the world, but it's for those who surf. It's like surfing North Shore at Waimea Bay. I mean, that's the big kahuna.
I interviewed a Supreme Court justice.
Oh, which one?
Not one of the U.S. Supreme Court justices, but a New York State Supreme Court justice at the Appellate Division, the First Judicial Division of New York. His name's Justice John Sweeney Jr. But it was pretty cool, right in his chambers. But anyway, what can people do to find out some more about you, some of the things that you offer, your book, all of that?
My book, Never Letting Go, is a guide on the journey through grief and is for all people of all faiths. And if you've lost a loved one or you know somebody who has, this is the book for them. And it's also for people who enjoy a good page-turner. I know some people bought it, they read the entire book in one day. They said they couldn't put it down, which is nice because it took me 18 months to write, so it made me feel good. My website is also neverlettinggo.com. You can find out about scheduling a private session with me over the telephone or in person. And also, you can follow me on Facebook. I do Skype, and I do by telephone readings. My clientele is worldwide. I've done readings for people from New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, India, Singapore, the UK, continental Europe, Canada, and the U.S., and that's what's, the wonderful about modern telecommunications. And if you want to follow me on Facebook and Twitter, you can do that also on my website. And also you can order the book through Amazon or Barnes & Noble. It's on sale worldwide, and it's in English, and I understand now in Slovak. The Czech Republic went ahead and bought the rights to it.
What's your Twitter feed?
Twitter feed is Psychic Lawyer.
Psychic Lawyer.
But if you go to my website,
don't ever try to use it out there because it's trademarked, right?
That's
right.
Do
you do intellectual property as well?
I have a friend who is really good at this.
Good.
And so anyone that even thinks of using it, don't.
For the Bobby Pickles podcast at Spark of Divine Meditation Center in Vero Beach, Florida, I'm Bobby Pickles.
Fatbenzo.com, 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 fatbenzo.com. fatbenzo.com, fatbenzo.com.